Welcome back to my mental health and crime channel. This is all my thoughts, my speculations. This is the case of the Idaho 4. May the victims rest in peace. Today I'd like to talk about Everwood. Everwood lives right opposite the front door of 1122 King Road. Everwood was good friends with Zana. We've seen a lot of pictures with her, a lot of photos with her and Zana. I found a couple of things to be very interesting in what she said in the Amazon Prime, one night in Idaho, Moscow, on the livings. She said that she met Zana by putting her location on, and she found out that Zana was a neighbor. And she said the day this tragedy happened, she brought out some blankets to the people who were sitting in front of the house. I would believe that's Hunter Chapin, Hunter Johnson, Emily, Jody, and the others. She heard the commotion from her window. There's two Evas in this case. There's the other Eva, that is Kaylee's friend, who was in an interview with ABC News. At the very beginning of this case, she said that she tried calling Kaylee, and Kaylee didn't answer her phone. It was 10 in the morning. So that clearly shows everyone knew about the quadruples except 911 and the police. Now, a new book has come out today by two writers, two authors, and what I find interesting is Wood allegedly heard someone trying to access her front door. This is around mid-October 2022. So the person touched her doorknob and tried to open her door. I don't know if she reported it. So there could have been a stalker doing such things in the neighborhood. Because if you remember the young college girl that lives 2 blocks away from 1122 King Road, remember somebody tampered inside her car and put her underlinen, her panty or something inside the car drawer or something, if you remember that? So somebody was actually stalking these female students and bothering them. And then we had the young man with the mask who was trying to open female students' flat doors. A picture was taken of him. And then you had this guy was running around with a knife, a Paradise Road, near the university, Idaho Moscow University, a vandals alert was put out. This was on the 12th of September 2022. Then I remember there was this young female who said that she saw somebody with a mask standing outside a window. This was before the quadruples happened. And the person had a flashlight. He shined it into a bedroom window. And she was in shock, and she said she ran and she checked if her door was locked. She wanted to lock her door, but it was luckily locked. And she reported the incident. So there was a lot going on. But I find it strange because Everwood lives right opposite 1122 King Road. So if she was facing the same or similar issues, there could have been a psychopath in the area. I believe Everwood goes to the same sorority as Kaylee. I don't believe it's Maddie. Ashton Coach goes in the same sorority as Maddie and Bethany Funk. DM doesn't go to the same sorority. She just tags along, is what I've always heard. But Everwood is very interesting because she talks a lot about locations. And that is what I've always wondered, if the police checked the locations. How many people's phones did the police actually take, is the question. How many people did they interview? Where was Everwood herself that night? She lives right opposite 1122 King Road, so she would have heard any screaming and yelling. But there was a stalker, or there was somebody going and harassing female students, knocking their doors, putting on flashlights into the windows, through the windows. So this is something that didn't just start on 13th November. These symptoms were showing long before that. But the police was debunking everything. They told us there wasn't the stalker theory with Kaylee. They debunked that. We heard Kaylee's father, unfortunately, saying Kaylee had injuries on her mouth and her lips. May she rest in peace. It looked like her mouth was gagged or tied up, or somebody held their hand on her mouth. They must have put a lot of pressure for the marks to show. But I really believe somebody gagged the victims up. Because you have to think, how would you get 4 victims to be silent? This is the picture, the door camera, door dash cam took of the person who was knocking people's doors. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's the same guy who was knocking Everwood's door. But it could have been the same person knocking different people's doors. So was there a stalker in town? There was a lot that was going on. But coming back to what Kaylee's father said, if his mouth or lips was tied up, for her, obviously, I believe, not to yell and scream and get attention upon them. Somebody must have tied up her mouth, and that's what I believe. It's more than one suspect. Because how could Koberger keep 4 victims in check? Because it's dangerous for him if one victim escapes. He has to keep all 4 of them in check, and then he deletes them one by one. I would assume, God forbid. I believe these children, these victims, were gagged when the police debunked it in the police conference from the beginning of this case. Do you remember when Chief Fry was asked, were the students gagged? His face turned red. He kept quiet for a second, and then he said, no. There was another question he was asked, was there a gathering or party in the house that night? He hesitated with that answer too. And then he said, not that I can think of, but we are examining all possibilities. I believe the students were not only gagged up, trigger warning, I believe, like Dateline exposed it, if that is true, allegedly, that Ethan's legs were carved and there's injuries on Kaylee's mouth, trying to describe most likely that she was injured around her lips and her mouth. So it looked like somebody tied her up, tied her mouth, or tied something around her mouth. And I really believe these students were gagged, because those were the rumors coming out from the students, from the college, from Idaho Moscow University. So I believe Ethan's legs were carved and Kaylee's mouth was really injured. We know that Kaylee got a lot of stab wounds. May she rest in peace. So this brings me back to the question I've always asked. Could the motives have been, all 4 of them, like I said, but especially 2, Kaylee and Ethan? Because they look like they were being tortured. Ethan's legs were being carved, may rest in peace, and Kaylee's mouth was being tied up, allegedly. And it does look like Kaylee sitting in a very strange position with the pictures I exposed that Saeed was, watching comfortably in front of the cops at Banfield, allegedly. The police debunked the incident in front of the college with the guy with the knife, who was literally going around and waving the weapon towards everyone on their way to college and back. They had to put out a Vandens alert. And now you have Everwood saying in the new book that she herself had somebody touching her door. Luckily, her door was locked, and she had a heavy bolt, a lock bolt on it, so she was lucky she wasn't in danger. So if Everwood had this experience, I wonder if somebody was targeting these group of friends, this certain group of friends. That's my question. But Everwood is very smart. She's the one that keeps on mentioning locations of Kaylee's phone being showing constantly that Kaylee and Maddie are inside the house. That was when they were unalived. So that means Kaylee's phone was at the scene. That's important. That's interesting. It had to be in the scene, but the question is, did any of the people who were at the scene take the phone with them? Did the cops take the phone with them? Did the forensic team take the phone with them? Who took Kaylee's phone is the question. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about Eva and the person trying to open her door. That was on the 15th of October, 2022. So that will be barely a month before the quadruples took place. There were a lot of strange things happening in the school, in the college. 12 September, the person with the knife incident roaming around with the weapon. So there was a couple of things happening. And Everwood lived right opposite 1122 King Road. She heard all the commotion of the ambulances and the cop's car, and she saw all of them sitting outside. I guess the hunters and Emily and the surviving roommates. So she lent them a blanket or blankets. Let me know what you think in the comment. Please like, share, and subscribe.